he needs to do that difficult juggling act of keeping Israel's friends and allies on side while at the same time not doing anything dangerous, fast and loose that would jeopardize Israel's security, and a plan that would require a plan that would not require Hamas to disarm immediately, or even this plan doesn't talk of the demilitarization of Gaza. It talks about Hamas putting its weapons into storage in Gaza, is dangerous for Israel's security, and that's not something that any leader can accept.
Well, we're yet still to hear an official response from the White House after Benjamin Netanyahu categorically after he categorically rejected Donald Trump's Board of Peace plan for Gaza. It's worth taking a look at what this means for the relationship between the US president and the Israeli prime minister, which was already, according to some, inside the White House, rocky. In a televised cabinet meeting yesterday, Netanyahu said that the Israeli military will not make any withdrawal until Hamas fully disarms, and also warned that as long as he is prime minister, there will be no Palestinian state in Gaza or the West Bank. Earlier this summer, the US president had grown increasingly frustrated that Israel's actions in Lebanon would jeopardise a ceasefire deal with Iran, with Trump confirming reports that he called Netanyahu crazy and used an expletive during a tense phone call. Well, joining me now is the former Israeli government spokesperson, Eylon Levy. Eylon, good evening to you.
Hello, Kate. A very good evening.
No response from the White House yet then after the Israeli Prime Minister categorically rejected the new Board of Peace roadmap to disarm Hamas in Gaza. Is that concerning, do you think?
No, I hope the White House will be taking Israel's concerns about the text very seriously. This is a very problematic plan. It essentially requires Hamas to disarm itself, and no one believes that Hamas is going to disarm itself. The Board of Peace does not believe that Hamas is going to disarm itself. Hamas has said that it's not going to disarm itself, and it wants to use its weapons to dictate the pace of an Israeli withdrawal instead of disarming first. So Israelis are asking, what on earth is the point of a plan that is going to give a shot, give them a chance, ask Hamas to disarm itself and see whether that works? Because if it's doomed to failure, then it's only going to make things worse. We all want to prevent another October 7th. We all want to prevent a relapse into war, and that's going to require Hamas to be totally disarmed and Gaza demilitarized. And this plan does not do that.
So why has the White House, why has Donald Trump put this forward? If no one believes Hamas is going to disarm itself, why on earth was Donald Trump waiting for Israel's sign-off on it if he already knew it was an unviable plan?
That's a very good question. I think within the United States there is a desire to see whether multilateral diplomacy can pull some rabbit out of a sleeve and make Hamas disarm. But after October 7th, the Israelis have learned the cost of believing dangerous illusions, and thinking that Hamas might disarm itself is a dangerous illusion. And in the time that it refuses to disarm, in the time that it continues to get rich off the vast supplies flooding into Gaza, you would see an international force of soldiers from mostly Islamic countries stationed in Gaza, effectively acting as a buffer, protecting Hamas from Israel. I mean, let's remember, the original 20-point plan said that Hamas members who agree to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons get an amnesty. This is a plan that would effectively give an amnesty to Hamas members, even if they don't commit to peaceful coexistence. It's a step back from the 20-point plan that was agreed to end the war last October. These are very serious problems, and there's nothing to be gained by pushing the problem into the long grass. Remember, for Israel, this is about making sure that a terrorist army cannot approach our border literally meters away from people's homes like they did before October 7th. So there's less tolerance for risk.
And look, when we have suggestions, when something as big as a peace plan, when it's put forward by someone like Donald Trump, there has to be a meaning, there has to be an intention behind it. And he, of course, and I'm not sure if you agree, it would be politically advantageous to him if he were to get something across the line in Gaza. He's got the midterms coming up. Do you think that is playing a part, to be quite frank?
Of course, the United States has an interest in showing that it has a diplomatic achievement, but Israel will be skeptical of any piece of paper that isn't worth the ink that's printed on it. The fact is, you can't ignore the elephant in the room. There is a terrorist army committed to Israel's destruction, the murder of everyone in this country that is holding on to its weapons and refusing to disarm.
Yeah, and presumably that is much more important to the people of Israel than their prime minister having a good relationship with Donald Trump, which might mean that Donald Trump has better success in those November midterms. I'm just reading the comments of a senior US official who was speaking to an Israeli journalist, Barak Ravid, who works for a company called Axios. And they say, we have no problem with it. This is on the statement from Netanyahu that was made after he met cabinet last night. We have no problem with it as long as he continues to do what we ask.
Look, Israel is in election season now. These are the most important elections for Netanyahu's career. His political life and his career and his legacy are on the line. But the fact is, no one in Israel believes that Hamas is going to disarm voluntarily, and no one in Israel would put their money on a plan that expects Hamas to do so. Any political leader who stood up and said, here is a piece of paper, peace for our times, and Hamas is going to disarm voluntarily, would frankly be laughed out of the room as a threat to national security. So I think Netanyahu has definitely accommodated America's requests to scale back the strikes on active Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Yeah. Tonight, Israeli media were reporting soldiers talking about their freedom of maneuver against Hamas being restrained. But everyone in Israel understands that Hamas is not going to disarm itself voluntarily, and it's dangerous to put any stock in a plan that expects it to do so. And, one of the lessons that Israel learned from October 7th is sometimes about the need to stand up to friends who may have the best of intentions, but to stand up against pressure to do things that may jeopardize this country's security when we know just how catastrophic it can be if we get things wrong.
Yeah, and look, the Israeli Prime Minister, he's up on corruption charges. They've been knocked down the line a little bit, but he's navigating a fine line, isn't he? Really, Eylon Levy, between keeping his constituents happy, between keeping the people of Israel happy, and not angering or alienating Donald Trump. Which is more important?
Well, the Prime Minister obviously has to balance competing interests. He needs to keep a strong, functioning relationship with our strongest ally, which is the United States. But at the same time, he can't play fast and loose with Israel's security. He cannot gamble with Israel's security, do anything that might let Hamas's terrorist army closer to Israel's border just to get a bit of diplomatic pressure off his back or make sure that he's better received in foreign capitals. So he needs to do that difficult juggling act of keeping Israel's friends and allies on side, while at the same time not doing anything dangerous, fast and loose that would jeopardize Israel's security, and a plan that would not require Hamas to disarm immediately, or even this plan doesn't talk of the demilitarization of Gaza. It talks about Hamas putting its weapons into storage in Gaza. Is dangerous for Israel's security, and that's not something that any leader can accept. I mean, he doesn't have any political rivals who are saying you should accept this plan. We should put our trust in this process.
Let's just move on briefly to Iran, which obviously runs alongside it and is related to this in terms of Hamas being proxies of Iran. But there is a war going on, as you well know, the US and Israel uniting in opposition against Iran, who are making increasingly unfavourable demands of the United States in their peace negotiations. Although, certainly the strikes have calmed down in the past few days, do you think we're going to get to the point where some extra or heightened sense of military action is going to become inevitable should Israel and the US put boots on the ground in Iran, for example?
The Iranian regime is making increasingly delusional demands to the United States. I mean, demanding the withdrawal of American forces, reparations for the damage in the last war, accepting tolls in the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know whether this is simply an irrational regime that's out of control or whether it's overplaying its hand. But the fact is, there was a diplomatic process, and it used it to spit in the president's face and keep shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz and threatening to kill the president. This is not a regime that wants to abandon its nuclear weapons.
But so yet, here is a president who needs that war to end, and that may involve some compromise from Israel.
Well, the president wants this war to end. It's definitely bad for him politically with the midterms in the United States. But at the same time, I think a president that has done so much to confront the Iranian threat militarily is not going to succumb to illusions that the Iranian regime is going to change overnight or abandon its nuclear weapons program. Again, he sent his vice president to negotiate a deal, perhaps the biggest opponent of the war within the administration. There was a deal that Iran began violating from day one by continuing to attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So I think President Trump is hoping that economic pressure will force the Iranians to bend. Remember, there is still an American counter blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And whether this all kicks off after the midterms and he's buying time or it's going to happen before, I don't think President Trump thinks that there is some grand bargain to be achieved with a regime that is still threatening revenge and vowing to kill him.
Well, look, thank you for speaking to us. Appreciate your take on that. Eylon Levy, who is a former Israeli government spokesperson, thank you for being with us.